Oh, you are going to love this show with Craig Mortale. Thank you so much for coming
Thanks
on.
for having me, Ann.
We're going to take a walk down memory lane with Muhammad Ali. You worked at ESPN for 30 years, helped get him on the air.
Right.
When did you first meet Ali?
March 31st, 1993.
Not that you remember that at all.
No, just another date in my background. Let's back up a little before that. First of all, Muhammad Ali was my hero. Let's start there. When I was a little kid growing up right here in New Haven, on 89 Carlisle Street, second floor flat, Saturday afternoons, Wide World of Sports, mid-60s, Cassius Clay was this new superstar. I mean, let's think about it. In the 60s, a kid like me, I loved the Beatles. I loved Cassius Clay. It was in the post-JFK assassination morning. There was all these new heroes that were different to our culture, new, hip, and Ali was that. And that's where it started. And I just followed his career in my youth. Always wanted to meet him. So, and to a large degree, the main reason I got into the business was all those years of watching Wide World of Sports with Howard Cosell. In fact, one time I met Roone Arledge at an Ali event, and I had someone introduce me to him, and I said, I just wanted you to know that if it weren't for him, and I pointed to Ali, I said, I probably would have never gotten in the business. I don't know if I'd be here today. And he looked at me and goes, yeah, I don't think we would have made it either, meaning ABC. So when I got to ESPN, I always wanted to do something with him. And in 1990, his biography that was written by Tom Hauser came out, but it was with Muhammad's cooperation, and it explained his Parkinson's. He still had all his money, or he still had some money.
Sure.
He was still traveling the world as this goodwill ambassador, so it wasn't as dire a story. There was a myth about what his life was like at that time, and I felt compelled to have to tell that story.
So how did you set out to do that?
Through Tom Hauser, who I met covering a fight for ESPN in New York. I was introduced to him by a colleague, and I explained to him what I wanted to do. And he said, how could I meet Ali? And he said, well, meeting Ali is easy. Let's talk to Howard Bingham, who's a renowned photographer and Muhammad's best friend, and let's get the meeting going that way. So I explained to Howard what I wanted to do, and he said, we're going to be in New York next week, bring a camera. It was as simple as that. And okay, so I booked a camera and explained to my bosses at ESPN, I have this opportunity to do something with Ali, he's coming to New York. I explained the type of show I wanted to produce, and they said, well, just do a feature and see how that works. Because they were concerned with his ability to speak.
Sure.
Would he interact well? He's much slower now. Well, from the moment he got off the plane, he just lit up the airport and lit up all the fans that were there. And I approached him as he came off the jetway. Howard introduced me to him, and I leaned over, and I think you have the photo. I leaned over in his ear, and I said, I've been waiting 31 years to meet you. And he said, you must be getting old. So we had a laugh immediately.
So you did this documentary with pure pleasure.
Oh, yeah. And a sense of duty. Because he was my hero and I loved him, I wanted to make sure that people knew he's not punch drunk. His intellectual capacity was, to his dying day, 100%. The mind never went. He had his money squirreled away. His wife, Lonnie, who is very intelligent, she had a degree from Vanderbilt and an MBA from UCLA, so she's highly intelligent. She ran his business affairs for him, got his money in order. She took good physical care of him because she recognized the Parkinson's. She got him the best treatment. I wanted to explain that part of his life. He's still traveling the world. When I met him, he's traveling the globe over 250 days a year.
Wow.
And he was 51, I think, at the time.
And you were friends then until the end, and we'll get to his funeral and how he had such an impact on the world. Let's take a trip down memory lane and start with some photos. And you just talk about these as we see them. What is this?
This is at the National Sports Awards in Washington. President Clinton hosted a sports version of the Kennedy Center Honors, and this was at the National Mall after the event, which was held at Constitution Hall. And this is Lonnie, his wife, Muhammad, and myself. This is perhaps one of my most favorite possessions. This is after a shoot in Michigan at his farm for 2 days.
In Berrien Springs.
In Berrien Springs, Michigan. You're very familiar with the area. This is after he granted me a surprise interview I had asked once, and I knew enough not to ask more than once. I'd ask his assistant on the side sometime, like, Kim, do you think Muhammad would be willing to talk? He says, well, one of these days you might be surprised. And on this occasion, he just started talking. We weren't set up to do an interview, and I had my photographer kneel down, because Muhammad was at his desk, and I asked him another question, and he answered it. And I looked at Muhammad, can we keep going? And he just nodded, and we were able to interview him. So this is outside his office in Berrien Springs, and my photographer Bruce took that picture, and I took one with Bruce as well. Bruce Taylor was an excellent
photographer. Was that his assistant or a friend of his that hung out with Ali? The gentleman on the right.
This is Paul Dunphy. He's a mutual friend of Muhammad and mine. I met Paul through Muhammad. Paul worked at a college in Massachusetts, and we became friends through Ali, and I can't tell you how many times that's occurred where Ali has drawn people together. You said earlier as we were outside, you collect people. Well, the Alis say the very same thing. Muhammad and Lonnie always said we collect friends and people.
How was he talking at this point? And were his eyes, like everybody said, so expressive that you knew what he was thinking?
Full of life, and he was still talking readily at this time. Again, in more of a hushed tone, but I was able to understand him and would communicate freely with him, especially on this particular trip. This wasn't even work. That's the moment where I met him, right there.
And where is that?
That's at LaGuardia in the American Airlines terminal. He had just said back in my ear, you must be getting old, and I'm cracking up because here's my hero making jokes with me, and I just met him 5 seconds ago.
Now, what was this like? You loved this guy since you were a young guy,
right.
And all of a sudden now you're standing next to him.
Well, I had to manage the professional and the personal. My personal admiration of him, but I had to couch it because I'm working. I'm producing a show on this man's life.
Or so you were telling yourself.
Well, yeah, it started as a feature. We'll see if we can evolve it into a show. But I was a field producer with a camera crew, and I had to direct them as well as have this relationship with my subject and his wife and his best friend and his assistant who traveled. And so I got to meet the whole crew within like 2 or 3 minutes of walking down the terminal at LaGuardia. I wish I had all that hair back.
Yeah, well, look at the glee. Okay,
this is another one of my favorite possessions. This one is hung, I blew this up and it's over my desk at home, framed and matted. This was also at the National Sports Awards in Washington, and one of my photographer, Rick Michler, had his camera, so he said, let's take a picture with Ali. And I immediately put the fist up knowing he'd react like that. And then we took a normal pose, but I love this picture because it's so him. It's just him making the face like, I'm gonna mess you up. And he allowed me to mess with him back. So this is our relationship in a nutshell right here.
It's said that he was, in many ways, a child in a man's body, that he just loved children.
And he was so approachable. That's the other thing, that I felt immediately comfortable with him. He had a knack for making you feel like you were the most important person in the room, no matter who it was. And when my kids got to meet him a couple years ago in Boston, and he's well into his Parkinsonian stage at that time, he didn't speak hardly at all for 5 hours when we were in his hotel suite, but my kids just gravitated to him, and he picked them up and put them on his lap. It was like their Santa Claus moment. And my daughter, Anna, he wouldn't let her go. She spent 20 minutes just cuddling and nuzzling with Muhammad Ali, and she didn't quite understand how big and who Muhammad Ali was. She knew he was my friend and my hero. And now years later, she's reading up and realizing this huge person that she met. This is in Las Vegas in 1997, I think. That's John Saraceno, who is my business partner right now. We're working on a documentary film on Muhammad's life.
Number 2, we should say, yeah.
My second go-around. John, at the time, was a longtime sports writer at USA Today, columnist and sports writer. This was at a fight in Las Vegas where we both knew Muhammad was in town. We went to pay a visit at his hotel suite.
And now this.
This is in Michigan on a lake somewhere outside of Berrien Springs, might be St. Joe's, on a pontoon boat, and just another day with the Alis. We had lunch and let's take a boat ride. Okay. And my wife Paula, who was then my girlfriend Paula, not even my fiance yet, this was I think her second opportunity to hang out with Muhammad Ali.
How impressive for you
it's
to
hard, it's
bring
hard
your
to lose
girlfriend along.
It's hard to lose a girl when you could throw out the Muhammad Ali thing. But the first time she met him was at the ESPY Awards in 1997 when I was in charge of Muhammad being awarded the Arthur Ashe Award, and I produced the video, but I was chaperoning Ali for the weekend. So that was her first trip to Connecticut. Not only did she meet Muhammad Ali, she had to meet my parents to spend the weekend in New York. This is also at the National Sports Awards in Washington with Angelo Dundee, Muhammad's longtime trainer, great guy who I had met through the years of covering boxing for ESPN, but this is the first time the three of us were actually together, and that's a photo I really treasure.
And was he talking then?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
What did he teach you about life?
Oh, yeah. I remember in particular one hotel room in Louisville in 1996. And we had a talk about women and marriages and how they break up and religion. And it was just two guys hanging out, talking about divorce and whatnot. And I wish I had a transcript of it, but it was brilliant. It was just he and I chatting with the TV on. We spent an hour in the room, just he and I. Everybody else was out. Lonnie was out doing whatever. I had gone to Louisville just to hang out with him. Actually, the trip, this is unbelievable. The trip was to get away from my life and go hang out with Ali for a couple of days. The trip was planned to go to Berrien Springs. I get a call from Muhammad's assistant, Kim Veit. Craig, I know you're coming into Berrien Springs, but we have an alternate trip. We'd like for you to go to Louisville. There's a dinner honoring former Governor John Y. Brown. Would you like to be our guest? So, okay, I own a tux. I could do that. So I pack the tux and we go. I land in South Bend, drive up to Berrien Springs. Kim greets me, goes, change of plans. You're going to New York with Muhammad. What's going on? Well, he has a chance to meet the president of Bosnia, Herzegovina. Can you get back on the plane with him tonight? Well, sure. It was just Muhammad and I flying back to, now I just left Connecticut. Now I went to Michigan, back to New York. Now I am his literal chaperone, just he and I. I'm walking him through airports, carrying the bag. We checked into our hotel, and we got up to the hotel room, and he said to me, are you hungry? I said, yeah, I gotta go for a little something. He goes, go get 2 cheeseburgers. So I'm like, okay, so I found the deli. And in fact, I had stayed in this hotel before. I knew there was a deli down the street. So I got myself a turkey sandwich and I got the 2 cheeseburgers, which I thought he was really hungry. Came back in the morning, only one of the cheeseburgers was gone, and I realized he wanted the other cheeseburger to go to me.
Oh,
he was
my gosh.
taking care of me.
See, I love that.
So we met the president of Bosnia at the UN the next day, and Howard Bingham had flown in overnight, and he met us. Then we went to Louisville, and then I had 2 or 3 days in Louisville hanging out with Muhammad's family. And Lonnie grew up Catholic, and Lonnie knew I was Catholic, and this is on a Saturday. He says, Craig, you go to Mass, right? I'm like, yeah, I go to Mass. When I can, meaning I'm on the road, and I'm not probably going to go tomorrow. He said, oh, would you like to go to Mass tomorrow? I'm like, well, yeah, for the dinner and everything, if we could fit in. He says, oh, no, my mother's going to Mass, and you're going to go with my mother. Oh, okay. So Lonnie's mother, a lovely lady, met me at the hotel and took me to Mass. So my Muslim friend's wife, who's also a Muslim, made sure her Catholic mother made sure I didn't miss Mass that week.
A day in the life of. Let's roll the home movies.
Hanging with Muhammad Ali.
So you took some shots, some movies. Walk me through this.
This is the trip to Berrien Springs. This is at his farm, and we're having a conversation. You asked, was he still talking? We were just walking the property, and here we are on the boat, on the pontoon boat, just going for a ride. After the place where they took us for lunch was on the water, and we just jumped into this boat, took a ride. This is at a public park. I think it's St. Joe's because it's by the river, and that was like a craft fair. And see how I put my fingers up?
Here's your wife.
That's Paula,
right? Yeah.
and he always did that. Like if you weren't paying attention, he put his fingers up to the rabbit ears thing behind your head, and yeah, of course you had to do that. But he was always flirting with your wife or girlfriend, whoever you brought along, and after a while you just gave up and said, okay, take her, you got her.
And wherever he went, people just came up to him. They wanted to take pictures with him.
Right. Again, very approachable, and you can mess with him. You can tell Paul's having a good time with him too, and Muhammad's laughing. He had this thing where this is also in St. Joe, outside near Lake Michigan, actually. And there's Lonnie and Assad. You may have seen pictures of Assad at the funeral. And Assad is all grown up now, but he was only 8 years old on this trip. And they had to look at Muhammad fooling around with babies. He loved children. But the Alis had a pool on the property, and I did bring my swimsuit, so I was swimming with Assad, and he kept asking me to throw him in the pool. And the kid weighed, I mean, he was only 8 years old, but he must have weighed 100 pounds. He's just a big kid. Again, that's another treasure.
This is a magic trick
right.
that he does a lot.
His disappearing handkerchief in the fake thumb. And you wonder, where did that go? And then he will show you the fake thumb. And this is, I think, traveling back back home, I guess.
Could you tell what he was thinking when he wasn't talking?
And there's Assad.
his son.
Look at the two of them. I mean, Assad is adopted, but he has a lot of Muhammad in him, as you can see. But this was at lunch in Barron Springs too. Just so blessed to, first of all, to meet your hero is one thing. To get to work with him is totally another. But to have him think enough of you that he wants you to hang around and say you could be my friend is just, it's just almost too much to fathom. And I'm so blessed to have been allowed to be a sliver of his orbit.
Well, now a lot of folks can say they were Muhammad Ali's friend.
Right.
And have this kind of access into his house.
Right, but here's the thing. Muhammad has literally met millions of people in his lifetime. Millions. There are friends. There are a lot of friends. I was fortunate enough to kind of sneak into the inner circle a bit, and maybe that's to a large degree why Lonnie invited me to go to the funeral. But, you know, I knew Muhammad on the back end of his life. You know, there are people who knew him coming up that he's still friends with. So the man has met literally millions of people, millions and millions of people. And what's even more remarkable is that he's touched the lives of billions of people. When you think of 74 years, how many people that say Muhammad Ali meant something to me, or I felt emotional when he fought. I felt involved when he fought. He empowered me to speak my mind because he spoke his. It's just a rare touch, and I'm glad I got to know him even during this period because he was still verbal. We still had a lot of fun together. You know, he knew who I was. When he saw me coming, he smiled. The last time I saw him was September of, it's about a year and a half ago, 2014 at the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Awards in Louisville. And he wasn't speaking much, but Lonnie invited John and I up to their private suite at the Ali Center. And I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't sure if I'd see him at all in person outside of the dinner. And one of the assistants grabs us, Lonnie wants you upstairs. So John and I went upstairs and we had our little audience with him. And as it turned out, it would be our last audience with him. But he was seated in a chair, and I went up to him on my knees, you know, bending and explaining to him. I said, Muhammad, I have one more film to do, one more documentary, and I want the world to know that this is where people will go to learn about you. When you're gone, this is where people are going to want to go to learn about your life, and it's going to be my last gift to you for all the wonderful things you've done for me.
What a beautiful thing.
And I get choked up just thinking about it.
Now, he has passed. Lonnie invited you to be a VIP at his funeral. Let's take look at some photos that we have that you took. This was the site of his funeral.
Right, this is at the KFC Yum Center in Louisville, home of the Louisville Cardinals basketball team. I was fortunate enough to be seated on the floor, row 17. There are a lot of famous people in front of me, but I must say there were a few famous people sitting behind me too. So this is in the hotel the morning of Evander Holyfield happened in, who I've covered many times as a producer for ESPN. I've been to his training camp many times, so it was great to see him again, and he's in really good shape. Friend of mine, Bobby Allen on the left, and Lou DiBella, boxing promoter, on the right. Larry Holmes, who had the misfortune of following in Muhammad's wake. Larry Holmes was a great, great fighter, but he followed Muhammad. I don't think he ever got the just due that he deserved. And I covered Larry a couple of times in training for fights as well.
This was some of the view outside.
The night before the memorial, John and I felt compelled to go to the Ali Center because we had heard these impromptu memorials were being set up. Very much in the same manner when Princess Diana died. People were laying flowers in front of her residence. And the same thing when John Lennon died. People went to the Dakota in New York, and where he was shot, and they started laying flowers. And this is right out front of the Ali Center. These impromptu memorials being set down by just common folk. You know, somebody went to the sporting goods store and bought a pair of Everlast boxing gloves and wrote a message on them, just plopped them down. People drew pictures, national flags for their countries were being laid down. It was really touching.
Now, Craig, you took a couple of videos at the funeral, and let's roll some of these and talk. What are we seeing?
This is Muhammad's funeral procession as it's nearing its end. We were at the hotel at the Marriott, which was the headquarters hotels for the event, and we just impromptu decided, let's run down to see if we can catch the hearse going by. And we literally made it by 30 seconds, and I even reached out to touch the hearse to say goodbye, but I did shoot it on my phone. And it was a truly touching event that here are all these people 5 and 6 deep, just want to pay their respects. But it was more joyous than it was sad. People were running beside his hearse in his old neighborhood, running, pumping their fists. The champ is here, the champ is here. It was a sense of joy more than sadness, and people laying the flowers on the windshield of the hearse. I've never seen anything like this.
And then you shot one more video, which is very telling.
This needs a little lead up, but as we left that corner where the hearse went by, we looked down and we saw a butterfly in the gutter, which I thought was dead, and we picked it up, and John held it in his hands and held it aloft to see it would fly, and look, straight to heaven. And we felt that his presence was among us. You can see looks on our faces, just astonished, the symbolism at this moment. That
fly like a butterfly.
Flow like a butterfly, sting like a bee. And here was this butterfly I thought was dead, and we picked it up, and John threw it up to the heavens, and it flew away. And we were dumbfounded for the 5-block walk back to the Marriott that we felt Ali's presence. And that wasn't the first time in the mourning period of his life that I physically felt his presence. The Sunday I got back, we were or before we went actually, I was at Mass and praying at the end of Mass and asking the Lord to bless him and thanking him for the blessings of having him in my life. And it was the first time that I actually shed tears because I was running around. I had to go on to ABC and serve as an analyst for them, radio interviews. My phone was on fire from all my friends that knew that Mom and I had this friendship. It just seemed like I had never stopped. And that Sunday morning, it kind of hit me. And we left Mass, went home, and then Paula had to take the kids out to run some errands, and I was home alone, and I was sifting through some photos of Muhammad and I together. And I found one of Assad and I, where I have Assad in a headlock, and he's looking up at me making the Muhammad face, I call it, when he's biting his lip. And I sent it to Lonnie as a text, and this is only a couple days after he died, and I said, I hope this makes you smile. And she messaged back, I laughed out loud. But at that moment, I just lost it. I cried for 5 minutes by myself. And then I just had this sudden sense of relief, and I felt this presence in the room, almost as if to say, it's okay. He's going to be fine. And I thought, he's finally free. God bless him. No more Parkinson's, no more being unable to talk, no more stumbling around, no more sitting in wheelchairs. He's Muhammad Ali again, and he's free. And I felt relief. And a couple other times, and you and I have talked leading up to this, and I kind of broke down that day when we had lunch, just remembering it all. But it means that much to me. He was a special guy. He changed your life, and you're going to tell the world about him one more time in another documentary. Yeah, we're in the development stage. We have some people we've sought out as investors. We're waiting to hear back. Nothing's finalized in that regard, so if anybody is interested, they could reach out to me, and certainly we would talk to them about it. My passion is fully behind this, to make this the ultimate Muhammad Ali documentary. Years from now, when kids want to learn about this man, this is where they're going to go. And again, I've worked on it for about 2 years now, just developing it, researching it. We're ready to go. So we just looking for the right investor to back it, and then get distribution, and off it goes. Craig Mortale, thank you so much for coming on and taking us down memory lane with Muhammad Ali. Well, it's anytime I could talk about him and educate people about what he was all about, I'm happy to do it, and he means that much to me. Thanks so much. Thanks, Ann.
When we're missing, who's this girl? Spend all night kissing, and the bumper's right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked to find my solution, and find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Need to keep locked in the grocery store of our mind, just to save time. Skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know, you know that you need me.